Hey everyone, welcome. This is our regular weekly ChooseFI Foundation summer series where we are going to be talking about meal planning tonight, and really just not even just meal planning, but like the overall cost of food in your budget, because we know that is one of our big three. Transportation, housing, and food are the three biggest areas that the average American spends the majority of their budget on. And we want to try and tackle the food one tonight. So joining me tonight, I have Danny Mendonza and Kathleen Hutchins, who are going to be our Danny's our in-house expert, and Kathleen has kindly joined us, even though she's in the middle of like moving right now. She's like, oh yeah, I'll hop on a podcast with you guys, no problem. Welcome. Danny, you want to say hi while I fix our screens?
Sounds good. Hi, Danny Mendonza here, and I work with the ChooseFI Foundation and wear the elementary hat. So I've dabbled in the creation of a pre-K through 12th grade curriculum, but I have worn the K through 5th grade curriculum hat and worked with alongside Rob, who's here tonight, and then also Mandy for the middle school. So look forward to having a good conversation and hearing a little bit more from Kathleen tonight.
All right, with that, Kathleen, tell us about you for anyone who hasn't met you before.
Hi, that would be probably everybody. I'm Kathleen. I blog at Cooking Up Fire. I also cook almost all of my meals. I have an Instagram that I don't update anymore. But I cook most of my meals at home. And I went basically from a disaster in the kitchen. I was burning everything because I thought everything should be cooked on high. It makes it cook faster, right? To starting to make much more gourmet meals and, cooking to a restaurant standard.
And the reason why we wanted to have you on was that you're very into cooking and the kitchen, and I think you've explored that area a lot. You know a lot about it, and also that you're in the fire community, which I think marries itself nicely to have you as a guest on this podcast. Like, it's not like your blog is solely dedicated to here's how you make the cheapest food possible, right?
Correct. I mean, I don't think living on beans and rice is for me.
No, and that would be a very short podcast. Beans, rice, we're done. Let's get out of here. But we do have a lot of interesting questions that we're going to tackle tonight. So we're going to talk about things like how to save money on maybe ingredients, how to look at a recipe and maybe adjust it so that you can reduce the amount of time you have to spend on it, or maybe the amount of money you have to spend on ingredients. So maybe some substitutions we can do, or ingredients you can leave out. We're going to talk about just, how does meal planning in general save you money? And we'll kind of wrap it up with some general tips from each of us about, what do you do with your food budget, and, how do you do it in your household? What ways have you found to save? So let's kick it off with what you do already. So Kathleen, what do you do with like food in your house? You said you make most of your own food. What kind of food are you making? What are you very conscious about how much you're spending, or is it kind of like, I value food, so I'll spend what I want on it?
So actually, I set myself a budget. It used to be $100 a week. That's for two of us plus two little kids that don't actually eat that much. And that includes snacks and breakfast and everything. But, of course, with the pandemic, food costs have risen. But basically, I set just about that amount. And I shop every 2 weeks now. I've converted over to being in the store less. And it helps me so that I'm not every week picking up extra things.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm only picking extra things up once a week because I'm twice a month. Oh my God, I can't do math. So basically what happens is I look at the sales circulars for the grocery stores and I figure out how to build meals off of that. So normally what I eat is, if you're listening to this and not watching it, I'm actually Asian American. So I eat a lot of Asian food, but my husband is actually Caucasian and he comes from a strong French background. His mom is Parisian French. So I had to learn how to make French food. And it's not actually that expensive if you're doing, I want to use ethnic, but it's not, it's like home style cooking.
Mm-hmm.
I found that homestyle cooking for almost any culture is going to be the most cost-effective but yet nutritious combination. So we do a lot of Japanese nabe, which is hot pot with a lot of vegetables in it. We do stir fries, so the Chinese style, because I'm Chinese, Japanese, American. And then we do like beef bourguignon and coq au vin and a lot of pasta, like homemade pasta. I don't always have time for that. But knowing how to cook all of the basic dishes and knowing the basic techniques that go into it means that I can figure out what to make based off of what's on sale.
Mhm. That's a cool tactic. Just like think about, okay, let's start with the cheap ingredients and then build meals around those. I know my wife and I don't do that, and we used to, and then it seems like time kind of caught up to us, and it's just like, okay, we know what we'd like to make. We got those ingredients. Let's do that. You're of course living in Hawaii. Is food more expensive there than it would be in mainland US, or is it about the same?
It depends on what you're buying. So
Okay.
pineapple, super cheap. So is macadamia nuts and Kona coffee. But in general, the staples that a lot of people are used to cooking with, so like celery, cabbage, carrots, those are corn, those are all significantly higher, even if you're buying something that's locally sourced or locally grown. So some of the things I used to rely on as being very cheap are not as cheap to cook with in Hawaii as compared to the mainland. But they're still relatively cheap. I mean, if you're comparing buying potatoes versus buying beef, even ground beef at the lowest price in Hawaii is like $2.99 a pound at the moment. Potatoes are $1.20 a pound. So you have to weigh, like, it's kind of relative.
Yeah. And I think it's just something we adjust to with whatever area we're in. There's going to be things that are local to you that probably are cheaper to source, depending on where you are located. If there's farms in your area, or food has to travel a longer distance. Are you on the coast versus central? In which case, maybe seafood has a different pricing. So, I'm sure that is a case for most people. But check it out, and I would guess that it makes sense then to make those items that are that bit cheaper one of the more staple parts of what you are building each week in terms of a food plan. Danny, what do you guys do in your house?
Absolutely. I would say that we have shifted drastically in terms of the introduction of kids. I know that I cooked slightly differently when it was just us. And I'm mentioning that for our audience sake, just kind of what stage of life you have, not needing to feel stuck in your current stage for the rest of time, feeling like meal planning can change depending on where you are and what you like and dislike. That's kind of where I have walked into meal planning in general. So do I love to cook? I'm an in-between kind of gal. So some days, some weeks, I love to cook more depending on the recipes that I find. And I'm always continuing to evolve and try and find recipes that my family love. So a couple of things that I have definitely tried to do as far as meal planning, I'll talk to the shopping in the store, but then also some things in my home. So in terms of shopping in my store, I try my very best to always go to the grocery store with a plan. I try and not go to the grocery store if I do not have my ingredients in mind, more so because on a budget, I spend more. I pick up random things that I wasn't necessarily going to buy, and I come home with them. The other thing that I also do is for young kids coming to the store with me, it helps because then I can give them a plan and they can dabble and help me with it. So I didn't mention earlier on, but I do wear the obviously elementary hat, and I have dabbled in meal planning with young kids, and we have that as part of our curriculum. And so that's something that I'm passionate about and teaching my kids. So at home, I try and do the same. So I have those conversations out loud with my kids. But at home, a couple of things that I try and do is I have a staple that comes in regularly. In our week, we do go and bulk shop from Costco. So we do have like your rice as a staple in a bigger bag that I lean on. We also do have your beans, your black beans, your kidney beans, etc. that we have as a staple. And then what I'll try and do is throw those into the Instapot. For me, time is valuable. And so what I try and do is pre-portion and kind of put a whole bunch into the Instapot, steam those beans, get them cooked, and then I put them into Tupperwares and kind of Tupper them up, and then think about my meals as a result of that. So that's kind of a strategy that I use. I also attempt to try and get my kids fruit and fresh vegetables, but I try and do those in the raw. So I try and have like your snacky things for lunch, like your carrots, your celery, things that I can pick up. I'm trying to get my kids interested in peppers and continue to introduce them. Those raw vegetables that I can get them in their hands, easy to pack, easy to move on the go as I kind of dabble. So those are kind of the strategies that I use.
Yeah, I saw that strategy. Do you follow Kids Eat in Color on Instagram?
I've seen it, and I always laugh because I always think to myself, oh my gosh, I have no time. I don't have time for that. But
if you're on Instagram, it's a wonderful channel to follow. Jennifer is the person who blogs over at Kids Eat in Color, and she has tons of ideas of like, here's how you can introduce foods to your kids and potentially try and convince them to give them a shot. I took a stab at trying to get her to come on with us tonight, and she didn't answer. I was like, dang it.
Yes, I did. I did take on the pepper strategy there because I do have my 2-year-old who didn't actually love it at first, but the strategy is you continue to introduce them to the food and not get it put off. So that's. But I also do like some of those foods because on a budget side of things, I can control. The price there.
Yeah.
And then also the staple like beans might be a little bit cheaper. I also didn't mention that I will also throw in, we don't have like your poultry or your meat every single night. So I'll try and do that. I'll throw that in occasionally to kind of change up the palate. But I am dabbling in a couple more vegetarian meals more often. I have a sweet potato enchilada dish that I'll then throw the chicken in, depending on kind of like a budget from month to month. But I can also exchange and substitute some of the ingredients in the recipe to kind of fit where I am and what I need. And that I am trying to do often is find recipes that I can exchange some of the ingredients, change the taste just a little bit, and it changes the overall taste of the dish, and then is a slightly different and varying palate for my kids.
Yeah, and we had a conversation about this with Laura Barrett. The end of May, was that right?
Yes.
And she had a kind of similar plan to you, like where she takes some of those, I guess, bigger bulk foods, cooks them separately, and then has them in the freezer and is ready to kind of like add into other meals as you as you create them. So I think she does like chicken, for example, and like cooks it in bulk, freezes it, and then she's kind of got like a grilled chicken or a baked chicken just like ready to add to a meal when that makes sense. If you want to find that recording, you can go to ChooseFI Foundation /meal planning 101, and you'll find the video link there. Worth checking out. It's a great supplement to this episode. We're going to make sure that we don't cover the same topic, so it's not a repeat of that. So definitely do take a look at it, particularly if you are interested in how do you involve your kids in this process of meal planning and getting them involved. And you can find the link at the bottom of the screen. All right. So we saw the Instapot mentioned, and this is one that I feel like was thrown around on the ChooseFI podcast for the longest time. Like back in the beginning, it was like, oh, Instapot, like this is the hack. This is the thing to do. Is it actually that big a deal? Because I don't have one.
I don't have one either.
I have a crock pot that rarely ever gets used. So I'm really curious, Danny, is this actually a hack?
I go back and forth as to the meals that I kind of dabble in, if that makes sense. I'm kind of a creature of habit, so I find myself consistently going to some set recipes. And sometimes when I find some that I like, then I'm all into the Instapot in terms of time. What I do love about the Instapot is I have found that it does eggs really nicely. So in terms of taking off the outer shell of the eggs and not having to soak them, go from the warm to cold to remove them. Another thing that I do like is sometimes that time element. But that would be the same thing as getting it into kind of like pre-thinking your meal, putting it all into either the Instapot or another cooking device, even your kind of like Dutch oven, and then going ahead to cook. So I wouldn't say it has to be something. I would personally say explore and dabble and look at the recipes, like join that Facebook group that has Instapot recipes and look at them and see kind of where that falls into your life stage. I'm very much a firm believer as to the value of time and to not be kind of following a trend just because someone else is doing it, but to dabble in different things for yourself. So you might even say to someone who has an Instapot, can I have it on loan and dabble and then try it for a week and see whether some of the recipes make sense for me? I would absolutely say that. So no, I'm kind of on the fence. I love it, I enjoy it, but would not necessarily say that it has to be this, I must have it in my kitchen. I think there are other ways to explore cooking and make it work for you.
Yeah, William says, like, I love my stovetop pressure cooker, cooks food faster in the oven. So like speed and time. And I will say, like, I love one pot meals, like where everything can kind of just go into one pot, maybe at different stages or all together is even better. And then it's, good to go. At the end, you've got like a great flavor and it's not a ton of cleanup and it's just an easier one to maintain, particularly if little ones are around. Kathleen, what's your like favorite, I guess, cooking tool?
Rice cooker. I'm Asian. Can't help it. Which I say this, and like our rice cooker died like 6 months ago, so I've just been doing without. And I'm thinking I should buy a new rice cooker. A lot of our meals start off with rice, and we use short grain rice, so it's not the long grain basmati. And you just put it in and you let it cook. You can add in vegetables and protein and cook at the same time, and it's pretty easy. In 45 minutes, it's done and perfectly. So I don't have to worry about it when I'm cooking something else. So we do a lot of one pot meals, so hot pot or nabe, where you put in, it's in soup and it's very hearty soup. So it's a lot of vegetables, like wamba. Sorry, I have to remember the English words for things. Napa
I think
cabbage.
It sounds great. It sounds very tasty, whatever it is.
And Napa cabbage. You can have, green onions, leeks, just a lot of vegetables, and very little amount of protein will go a long way. And then if you have the rice cooker, you've got rice on top of that, and you don't have to worry about it while it's cooking.
See, I'm in that life stage right now where kind of introducing some of those vegetables to my kids. Some nights it's more well received by my 2-year-old. It's normally well received by my 4-year-old. I kind of seem to have gotten through and pushed through that hump in terms of like that introduction of food. But so I'm very much conscious of dabbling in meal substitution. So seeing a recipe, taking something out that might be, not one more costly, but the other might be not as well received for my kids, because I'm kind of training my kids to eat what we eat rather than me creating a totally different meal plan for them. So they go ahead and eat exactly what we eat. And I saw from someone else in the comments, they kind of William mentioned twofold. One, to say that, your Instapot might allow you to cook different aspects of your poultry or your meat and have different types of cuts of meat, and then being able to cook and get the pressure helps break down the meat, number one. But the other thing that I also saw in the comments was the mention of where you shop, right? And I think that's kind of a comment, that something we need to talk more about tonight as well. Not just how you shop, but also where you shop does drastically impact your budget. I know I'm going to throw out a name, Thrifty Frugal Mom, as someone that I've followed for a little bit and someone that I've dabbled in. I first found her through one of her posts on Pinterest, actually. I shopped at Aldi early on in our marriage. I liked it because I always did love, this is going to sound funny, but I love the fact that I controlled putting in the quarters, grabbing my cart at the beginning, and being able to go in and kind of dabble and kind of be taken through, at least the one that I shopped at, a channel. So you literally went through almost like a maze to get in, and you were pushed through into the different sections. It took one less thing to think about when I went into Aldi. But I also found on that Pinterest, she has two things that I wanted to touch on tonight. But one is her 18, I think she calls it 18 money savvy, 18 money saving ingredients. So where you can substitute some ingredients and take them and have them as kind of like staple ingredients, but then you can kind of make substitutions and they taste the same that come to mind. Like your cream for whole milk, you could substitute that. You've got your Parmesan cheese, rather than having it fresh, you could just have it in the jar, taste the same. So those might be something that affects your budget. Another one that has come to mind that I've dabbled in a couple of times, I never buy buttermilk. And so I will normally just make the buttermilk. Okay. So I always just make it. And I find that that's just something, if I do bring buttermilk into my house, I realize that it normally goes off before I use it. The same with even cream. I might have one particular ingredient recipe that calls for that ingredient, and then I find that the remainder sits in my fridge and I don't use it as often. So I've just tried to find different ways to substitute. How about you, Kathleen?
Actually, I do substitute the more high cost cuts of meat, and I use a lot of lower cost vegetables. But we don't have Aldi here, or Trader Joe's. Feel sorry for me. But when I was on the mainland, one of the best places for me to get vegetables was actually at some of the Asian grocery stores. Specific ones are H Mart. It's a Korean market, but don't get stuck in the snack aisle, because you will spend your fortune there. Yeah. It all looks very enticing. But the fruits and vegetables section is really robust for Asian vegetables and fruits. So if you're trying to cook more Asian food, that's the best place to get very cheap but fresh vegetables. But for substitution, I've noticed a lot of things like, there's recipes that call for fennel, for example. I don't know how much fennel is in Maryland by you, Rob, but here it's $5 a pound.
I couldn't tell you, but a lot of our spices are expensive because I shop at Wegmans, which is probably not the cheap place to shop.
Fennel is, the fresh vegetable, not the spice.
Oh, not the spice. Okay.
I'm glad that you know what that is, though. That it's a spice too. Fennel seed is a spice that they usually, I think, put in sausage. But it's a fresh vegetable, and it's kind of licorice-y tasting. Not that everyone needs to know about this. And instead of fennel, I started putting in Napa cabbage. Or Chinese cabbage. I don't know which one everybody calls it, because it's still crunchy. It's not as flavorful, but here it's 89 to 99 cents a pound. versus $5.99 a pound. So you can see the huge price difference just from that one thing. So you have to find things that either taste similar or have similar texture or have similar cooking properties, as it were. Right. So things like celery versus carrots have similar cooking properties. They'll cook very similar to each other when you boil them, for example. That sounds very attractively tasting, though.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like when you're like doing a soup or something like that, and you're told like, okay, you need to saute like celery for X number of minutes to soften it. Like carrots will roughly soften in about the same amount of time.
Correct. But it's the same way you can substitute broccoli and cauliflower. But if you're trying to cook like a buffalo cauliflower, you couldn't really use something that would not have the same texture and cooking time like bean sprouts. Like that would not be a suitable substitution. Gotcha.
And so like when we're looking to substitute, like you said, you're looking for things that similar cooking properties. You're ideally looking for something that's cheaper if you're going to substitute an ingredient in or one out.
Right. Don't substitute truffles for mushrooms.
Yeah. And look, yeah, like you guys talked about the meats, like if it depends on what you're cooking, of course, but if you're doing something that is going to allow for you to break down tougher cuts of meat, it makes sense to go for a cheaper cut of meat and you will still get the same result at the end of the day. Like if you're going to make a stew of some sort, then a cheaper cut of beef is perfectly fine. It's going to like soften up anyway through that process.
I substitute tri-tip for ribeye. Okay. I don't know. I didn't really see tri-tip very much on the East Coast when I was living there. I was more in the Southwest and the Southwest area, and it's really big in Hawaii. So it's usually at least half the price if you do eat beef versus getting ribeye, which tri-tip has a similar fat content. It's from a slightly different, of course, it's from a different section of the cow. But when you cook it up, it cooks in about the same amount of time. You still get that flavor. You still get the chewiness. It's just not nearly as expensive.
Nice. Good tip. I didn't know that. I haven't heard of tri-cut. At least I don't think so.
Tri-tip.
Tri-tip. Sorry.
But obviously.
And again, I'm not like the biggest, I guess, food enthusiast. Like I love cooking. My wife and I love cooking, but we're not like, I guess, the most experimenting. Like we're probably on the side of, we save time by having like 30 recipes that we just kind of rotate on a regular basis that we all know how to make pretty much by heart. We don't need the recipe up anymore. We can make a grocery list almost from memory at this point because we rotate through the same ones. But it also means that we're not exposing our son to as many things as we'd like to. So we're trying to bring in some new stuff as well. All right. Any other big substitutions that we should know about before we move into the next part?
I guess my main one is just taking out and this is what I'm exploring in terms of vegetarian, but taking out the meat and actually exploring with a vegetable. And I'm doing that more so because I'm trying to introduce my kids to, a wider range of vegetables rather than just the select few that we always go to, right? So that they are kind of exposed to more. And I also do find sometimes in terms of freezing and putting things into the fridge, sometimes that like I've mentioned it twice, but my sweet potato enchiladas, I can go ahead and put them in the fridge and they taste as good. I don't stuff the tacos, but it tastes as good having been a couple of days in the fridge. And so I look for meals and recipes like that to save me time as well. And then something also I do want to mention, Jennifer had mentioned this, kind of like the online shopping versus actually going into the store and knowing what you value, right, in terms of and your buying habits. And I think Jennifer had mentioned that she goes into the store and she realizes that she impulse buys more when she goes into the store. And I love that she mentioned that, and knowing it's kind of like finding who you are as a person and as a shopper, right? And then finding your flaws, your strengths and your weaknesses, and then kind of trying to dabble as far as budget's concerned. So that's kind of what I'm playing with as well, and why I mentioned kind of that impulse buying, but attempting to kind of think through my recipes, do the substitutions before going into the store so I'm not impulse buying. And so I saw that and I smiled, touching on what Jennifer had mentioned.
Yeah, that's exactly where we want to go next anyway, is now let's get out of what you're shopping for and go into where you are shopping or how you are shopping. So you've both mentioned Aldi already. Is that the gold standard for probably like the cheapest, I guess, chain grocery store that we can do? Kathleen, I know you said H Mart as well. I don't shop at Aldi, so I'm not very familiar. I used to actually when I lived in Ireland, Lidl or Lidl. I'm not sure which one's actually the right pronunciation, but and Aldi were kind of like these sister stores from, I think they're German. and they always seem to set up in pairs. And that was a wonderful place to shop. My parents loved it. I do find for our current situation with my wife and I, what we like to eat in terms of organic and a lot of gluten-free, because my wife is gluten-free, that we weren't able to find a lot of things we wanted in Aldi that we could find in Wegmans. So the choice is definitely more limited in something like an Aldi, but I think that also results in cheaper prices. So where are you shopping, Danny? Are you mostly Aldi, or are you in a couple of places?
I kind of dabbled. Actually, right now, I probably find myself just like you, more so in Wegmans, only because we are kind of focusing more on the organic side of things as well. And I've had a better kind of rebound rate there. It kind of, I get bought back there. But what I have dabbled in terms of when I go to the store with my kids, and I mention this because a lot of people say, do you meal plan with your kids? Do you shop with your kids? Or is it something that you just do when you put your kids to bed and then you go out to the store? I find that the experience, I'm all for kind of looking for the experience and then also the value of time in my shopping. So why I would also go to Aldi other than the prices. So prior to when my kiddos were younger, so when I just had my one kid, we shopped at Aldi a lot more. And I kind of, what I found I did was shopped on a more rigorous budget there. And then as I found the prices in the store and get to know them myself, then I've given myself a wider kind of funnel, and I've given myself more leeway to have more kind of what I value, and then to substitute things in and out, number one. Number two, as far as Aldi, my kids love to push their little mini carts. And so in terms of teaching them the process, I know this sounds funny, but for me, the value of time and getting them into the store and involved in the process is part of it, because I want to encourage them to cook. So I go into Aldi a couple of times more so, and Lidl, where I might not have in some instances, merely to get them involved, push, and them to take ownership in terms of the conversation in the grocery store.
Danny, you're being counterintuitive here. I mean, you cannot put a kid with a grocery cart and it somehow saves you time. It's just not possible.
I stopped bringing my kid because he would ram the cart into other people. And I have had to apologize to so many octogenarians.
Oops.
And he's running it into displays. I'm like, oh God. Okay. The last straw was when he ran into the wine aisle. I was like, oh, no, you're done.
Yeah.
Oh, Laura says she goes to farmers market. So actually I shop at local grocery stores, so it's really not helpful for anybody else. And I go to farmers markets. I actually have a sweet deal with a farmer. I used to trade my Myers lemons and my lychee for other product.
I think that's a huge point to bring up. And like, there are in a lot of places local farmers markets. There are farm co-ops that you can be a member of. So you will see local farms that basically you can become a member of that farm and you get special discounting on the fruit veg, or sometimes you just get like a basket or a bag of veg sent to you on a weekly basis once growing season starts. That can be a very big hack for like getting stuff like that much cheaper. So certainly, I wouldn't discount that at all.
Also on the budget side, something that we're actually had a conversation with this week and that we're going to be dabbling in is actually being in touch with local farmers and buying actually so you buy the entire animal and then you have the different cuts. So it takes some work in terms of cutting it down and the storage, but we're going to be dabbling in a little bit of that as well, because that's going to drastically lower in some instances your food budget, like you've kind of got it. I'm going to have to do more planning on the front end to realize how I'm going to use the different cuts and kind of dabble in terms of some recipes. But I'm all for exploring it. I think I am in definitely more of a exploration stage in life, encouraging the kids to see it as that as well. So we actually have, I think we are having conversation with Jonathan's brother who lives in the same area as us, and kind of basically sharing the animal and kind of sharing the portion of meat and putting it in our freezer.
Which, if you get tri-tip, I have a recipe for tri-tip roast that takes 25 minutes to cook in the oven. It's delicious.
Very cool.
But that kind of brings us then to this idea of, I guess, one store that comes up a lot in conversation, particularly on ChooseFI or with different guests, is Costco, and being able to buy things in larger quantities. Is this actually, so is it something that actually saves money, or does it encourage people to buy more stuff than they actually need, and you end up, kind of overspending and stuff goes off, or you don't use it? It's kind of like that, that catch where like, oh, something's really on sale. And it's like, well, if you hadn't intended to buy it in the first place, you overspent. Is Costco that trap, or is Costco actually like a great play here? What do you think?
Depends.
It does depend. I would say it depends on your
Classic
frame of
personal
mind
finance answer.
in going in. Well, I say it merely because if I get into the habit of going to Costco for my entire shopping experience, sometimes I find as though I will pick up those $10 items like $10.99, $11.99, and before I know it, your budget
It's like
has gone up.
$150.
Absolutely.
And you only bought like 10 things.
Absolutely. So what I try and do then, again, it takes a little bit more forward planning, but think through what I might be kind of the stage. Like I mentioned earlier, we go to Costco for the bulk bag of beans, and then I'll dabble in recipes that will allow me to expand that and change up the recipes accordingly. Those seem to be a win for me. I also would go to Costco for something like having young kids, the diapers, because I have found that buying there, I know it's not food, but I have saved $10 on buying the Costco brand, the Kirkland diapers. I would have I had every intention of being the mom, the purist who was actually not wearing diapers with my kids. But again, a sidetrack because it's not directly meal related, but I know it is connected because people might say, okay, hey, you've got your food budget and then you've got your other side, kind of your toiletry budget. They do kind of sometimes overlap, and it does dictate where you go, right?
It catches used food.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people like they put their grocery store trip as part of their food budget. So like you might notice that like, oh, I spent $180 this week in the grocery store. And it's like, well, actually, how much of that shop was groceries and how much of it was things like toilet paper, paper towel, bathroom products, that sort of thing that like, okay, technically that's not food. That's got to go in a different category, or maybe you do lump it in the same category. Great point. All right, Jennifer has a thought on Sam's Club and Costco. So had Sam's Club and Costco. So both of these are bulk wholesale food markets that you can buy larger quantity stuff in and find it leads to overspending, at least for a smaller family. So that is also a point. How many people are you trying to feed? So if you are trying to feed a larger group, then buying in bulk definitely makes more sense. But if it's just maybe you and a partner, or you're on your own, or single parent with one child, then maybe Costco is a little bit of an overkill, or same with Sam's Club. But there are other perks such as savings on gas, or other different types of gift cards, or random items like a trampoline. So
Rob, it's actually a different perspective in Hawaii. Almost everybody goes to Costco because the prices are so much different than going to the regular grocery store, just because they have the bulk savings. We can easily save 50% or more compared to buying something even on sale at the grocery store.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't buy. I buy very select items at Costco or Sam's Club, what have you. So things like butter. For the cost of a stick of butter or 2 sticks of butter at the grocery store, I can buy the big container.
Absolutely.
And freeze it. So anything I can freeze, I will buy in bulk. Or if it's shelf stable, I will buy in bulk. But if it's fresh stuff, I will not. So cheeses can get frozen. Dairy products, for the most part, can get frozen.
Yeah.
Don't recommend freezing eggs.
I've never tried. What happens? Do they break in the freezer?
Yeah, I think they kind of do. Yeah.
Oh. Maybe if they're slightly older eggs and like the airspace has gotten that little bit bigger. I freeze them. There's room.
Yeah. But before we forget, one last thing we're not addressing is being able to grow your own food.
Yeah,
we have dabbled in that as well. We've recently gone ahead and planted our own zucchinis and squash.
Good luck.
And
you're gonna have a bumper crop.
Thank you for that. I know we had planted some. I think we got a whole packet of seeds, and we ran into some friends who do more kind of homegrown, and they said, "You've got a whole pack of seeds. Why do you have an entire how many seeds? Because they grow, they take over." Supposedly. So we're going to be dabbling. Hopefully, my kids like squash and zucchini.
You're gonna be having a lot of it.
Maybe you can trade it to other people for their stuff, and just everyone grows their own things.
In Hawaii, we go fishing to get fish. I mean, my husband would go scuba diving, catch lobster. Poor us.
That's tough.
People go boar hunting. I know some people were vegetarian, like, oh, that's horrible, but people go hunting, and that's actually how my husband got through high school. He was living on his own, basically, with his grandma up in like rural Texas, and he was like, bow hunting season's great because it opens a month earlier than deer hunting season, so he could get food to eat.
Yeah, I find that with my students a lot. So I live, I taught in a high school like up in rural Maryland, and I would do a meal planning project with my students, and they would say like my meat cost is zero because like basically I hunt it all and then I freeze it and then we use it throughout the non-hunting season. And yeah, it's certainly something that you can do to save money. And I try and like get them to go through the process of like, what was the actual total cost to acquire that meat versus what you could buy it for in the store. So like they're kind of like,
significantly lower.
Yeah, they're like, oh, it's free. I'm like, no, it's not free. You still had to do something to get that. There was equipment involved. There was maybe like some cost in terms of gas or transportation or butchering. But yeah, it usually works out much cheaper to do that than it would to go buy the same cut in store. What else is kind of like good to grow at home? What about herbs or herbs? I don't know what's the right way to say it. Herbs.
Mint will take over.
Yes, we have found that as well. We've dabbled in mint, basil as well.
But Fort Knox. Sorry, I read Dylan Rhodes.
But what I go ahead and do, and I have found, is I generally just normally buy kind of my jarred spices, but then I'm dabbling and kind of trying to grow some of my own and experimenting and seeing, because I do find a difference in taste when I'm sprinkling something fresh on my meal. Yes. I do enjoy it. Not just that, I'm also trying to get my kids involved in the process as well. So it's twofold for me there. And we're dabbling, we're new to it. So we're definitely learning and would love to continue to hear from community members regarding that as well.
So here's an idea. If you use green onions and you buy it from the grocery store, get the ones with the nice healthy looking roots on it.
Okay.
When you cut it off about an inch from the top of the bottom, not the top, just use the little tip from the bottom, put it in water for just like a day to let it get over its shock. When it starts sprouting up again, then you can plant it. Then now you just cut the parts that you need every time you need green onions. Mm-hmm. And now it will continuously grow. I mean, it might be a little different depending on what your weather's like. So in the winter, I might not be too happy about it. You might want to put it in a pot instead. But I have not had to buy green onions in like 15 years.
It's funny. That's like, if that ingredient pops up on a recipe, that's the one that gets cut for me. Because I'm like, nah, it's not worth getting.
But you can keep growing it and you can use it for other recipes.
I think you can do that with regular onions too, right? Like when you cut off the ends, like you can just take that end, put it in water for a little while, it will sprout, and then you can plant it and you will start growing your own onions very quickly.
Yeah.
There's actually a couple ones coming in from the chat that are awesome. So William said asparagus,
fennel.
Yeah, coriander,
fennel, not
basil.
the spice.
Yeah.
Rosemary is good too. Fresh herbs from the grocery store are usually very overpriced.
I think so.
They're usually like $5, between $3 to $5 for a tiny little bit. Versus if you grow your own or you get it from a farmer's market, you can probably get it much cheaper.
And the thing I like about growing your own herbs is that you can do it in small spaces. Like, we live in a townhouse. We don't have a garden for growing vegetables in the back. That we wouldn't get enough light or rain for that matter to do it. So it's like doing small little planters or boxes works really well for us, or even indoors we can do these. And, we grow a lot of basil because that's probably the one that we use the most. Same thing with cilantro. That's one we use a lot. And like, it's a very expensive thing to buy in small quantities every single time. So yeah, growing your own actually does probably save us maybe like $50 a year or something like that. Like, it's not huge, but it's certainly something when you like grow your own for a season.
If you don't have access to growing space in your home, you can also see if there's community gardens you can participate in.
I was just about to say that. That
was
was
tell us more.
right frame down the road. Absolutely
tell us more.
Fantastic. Yeah, tell us more.
Me?
Yeah.
I have a garden. Well, a community garden is usually something they use it mostly for people that live in urban areas. So they stake out a plot of land that you can get a section of to grow your own vegetables. Sometimes there's a membership cost to help with upkeep. Sometimes there's not. It just depends on who's running it. Mm-hmm. So there's actually a local community garden here near where I live by Schofield Barracks. that actually was, I guess, Schofield Barracks owns the land, but they let the city run a community garden so people can grow vegetables there. They have access to water. I've heard that community gardens in urban environments actually have less of a problem with pests. So because they're surrounded by a concrete jungle, there's less opportunity for things like beetles or worms to get, not worms, slugs to eat all the vegetables. So they're actually better for growing vegetables than out in the countryside.
Okay. I definitely, I've been offered like an ownership of like a small plot, like someone's trying to get rid of theirs. Like I guess it was part of a community garden and they owned a small piece when they were trying to offload it. Wasn't in a position to like do that at the time. It seems like if I have to drive 5 minutes to get to it, it's like, this is not going to work for me.
5 minutes to get vegetables. Oh.
To grow my own vegetables.
To grow your own vegetables.
Like, I have to go there and maintain them. And
I feel like that sounds like a first world problem.
it certainly does. Well, speaking of, I think there's a lot of hacks that are available to those who have extra money, have extra space that are not available to everyone else. And this is something that my students have brought up to me before, that it's expensive to be poor in the sense that the opportunity to buy in bulk is not necessarily there. Having a deep freezer that you can use to really store meats and stuff like that for long periods of time is maybe not there, or just space in a pantry to store stuff for long periods of time. So it's certainly like a place of privilege when you can do that. Any tips for maybe people who can't do that?
I don't have a deep freezer.
Okay, so we can do it without a deep freezer.
And I basically all our meals are between $2 to $5 a month. Amy Decision, who wrote the Tightwad Gazette, had a really good suggestions about finding storage space in your house, even in a small apartment. So things like storage space under your bed, over, the overhead part of the closet for things that you might not need to access too regularly. Putting up shelves in your hallway that are above head height to hold bulk items. I don't remember the other ones. It's been a while since I've read that book.
But yeah, that there's a lot of unused space in a house that many of us don't realize. And if you kind of just kit it out in a cheap sort of way, like shelving, you can put up pretty cheap, though it's 4 times more expensive now if it's made of wood, probably. But you certainly can find space for storing some of the big things. Like if you want to buy like a big sack of rice or something like that, I'm sure you can find a place to store that in your home somewhere.
And this is not addressing the problems of like food deserts or inability to transport bulk foods, because people who take the bus regularly, it's almost impossible to transport bulk foods from Costco.
The other thing that does come to mind, I have thoroughly loved my community for Buy Nothing. I don't know if you've heard of Buy Nothing, but we have, it's not just about, what I love about Buy Nothing, it's not just about taking, it's about what you're giving to other members in the community. And so it's being a blessing on them as well. So helping, where you are rich in kind of either your skill sets as well as kind of in different pockets, right? We are all different. We're different family members. We are able to bless someone else with the opportunity of what we have. And so I've really loved that. But when it comes back to food, what I've actually seen is some great conversations on our Buy Nothing site that have discussed people, in the, even talking about herbs, saying they've got, a plentiful supply of this particular herb. Would anyone like some? So it's probably being forthright and open and having a conversation on the Buy Nothing site and saying, this would be my wish. I'm in this standpoint where I'm needing some herbs I would love, and seeing if there's someone in your community that would be able to bless you with something that they're growing, and then being able to do the same on the back end. So you might be, have a spouse that hunts. Yes. Oh, yeah, zucchini. Yes, well said, Rob. So we might be able to kind of trade, and that would go into other aspects of your life. So not just, from a budget perspective, other in terms of, I think of my husband with tools, that we have and we share with others, not just food, but the same would go for that on the Buy Nothing side. So definitely being an advocate for yourself and not being afraid to kind of speak out. I definitely have reached out, even coming to the community gardens in the Buy Nothing site. Someone gave their time to go and help with a community garden, right, in the area to help things grow for other people as well. So trying to kind of think about your community in the process, and being enriched and helped in that way too.
Are these Buy Nothing groups typically Facebook groups, or are they their own separate websites? Is it like one large website that's divided by a geographic area? Like, what are these?
Great question. So if you went to just Google and you typed in buy nothing, it is normally a Facebook group because that's how that's the platform that they've used. But they would have geographic location. And what they do is they tell you kind of your coordinates as to whether you fit into a certain group. So you're not going to be able to be in each group. So like when we moved from our last neighborhood, I actually absolutely loved our buy nothing group. And it hasn't quite been the same to where we are now. And I guess what I've put into kind of my belt is I'm going to do all that I can to build our buy nothing group and make ours a little bit better in that aspect of things. But yes, it's geographic location. You can type it in, you can find it. It's big enough that it's global, it's international, and they have, from Cape Town to Hawaii they have groups everywhere. So it's basically, even if you didn't have one, you could reach out to someone about starting one in your area if you're that passionate about it too. I've loved getting to know community members through that and being able to help others with things that we have and vice versa, and enjoyed it in the process.
Basically, it's on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yes.
To answer your question.
And like speaking of Facebook groups, that can be very helpful, particularly for trading things, finding deals, that sort of thing. I would check out your Facebook local groups for ChooseFI as well. You can find those at ChooseFI.com/local, and that will just tell you where the nearest geographical local group is for you. And that's a place I go a lot when I have questions about like where I live in Frederick, Maryland. I'll sometimes go there and be like, hey, does anyone know where I can find XYZ for cheap, or anyone have a recommendation for a plumber, or pick your service. And I like asking other people in the FI community because the chances are someone's probably done their research in a FI way, looking for great value, or they know somebody and they're willing to share that contact. So
and
great
William
hack.
would also kind of talk more to this, but there's also a homegrown local group as well. So good to know.
Okay. So let's move into the next part. And actually, the next part I want to go to was spices, because I think, Kathleen, you had talked about potentially getting these things at something like a H Mart versus going into your local grocery store. I find when I go even into Wegmans, buying the containers of spice versus going one aisle over to the ethnic section, so the kind of the Irish, the English, the Hispanic, the
Asian.
It's all in one little mini aisle, and then you just, I guess, have everything else across the store. But if I go one aisle over and the spices are in little baggies instead of in containers, they're a quarter of the price. Anything else with spices that we can think about? Because that's probably one of the more expensive parts of a meal sometimes, especially if you don't have that spice already.
Don't buy too many spices. Spice is life, but you can substitute spices and if you're Indian, I'm so sorry, but you can do the warm spices together. So things like cinnamon and nutmeg, pretty good equivalent for each other. Coriander, chili,
paprika,
drawing a blank, turmeric. Those all can get substitute for each other. So, for example, if you're making butter chicken and you need to marinate the chicken in, you're supposed to use garam masala and ginger and some other chili. And you don't have garam masala, but you have, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank, a different warm spice. Just use that instead. Because the only person that's going to complain about the flavor is you.
True. Unless you're really trying to go for I want to recreate my local restaurant.
You got to be a little flexible.
But in terms of the effect that it's going to have on the meal, you're getting something similar at least.
Right.
Well, that was also something when I started cooking that I found is I would find some great recipes and then realize that there were a bunch of ingredients that I never had.
I didn't have. Yeah.
And you would go to the grocery store to buy those ingredients, use that one thing for that one recipe, and then it would sit. So that's something that I've learned along the way, is attempting to look at that recipe and then kind of do a little bit, even if it's just a general search, to try and find that substitute for that particular item and see whether you can substitute that. That's something that I've learned along the way. May someone else benefit from my pitfall.
or really search out other recipes that will use that and kind of make an effort to stay in that genre for a while. Or if it's a large fresh item and you're okay, I only need a cup full of kale, but I can only buy it in giant bags of it, then okay, I'm gonna find a couple of kale recipes this week to use.
William, I couldn't remember the name of the other thing. I know that you shouldn't substitute.
Yeah.
You should substitute those two, the turmeric and chili.
It's not quite the same, but it's close enough, right? All right. So last one, and Kathleen, you brought this up when you came on as like, this is a topic that we didn't consider talking about, but we probably should, is let's talk about hacking eating out. So we can talk all about like, no eating out, make it at home. It's cheaper to do it at home.
Possible.
But let's like, if we're talking about doing things better and making things more cost effective, I've got a restaurant budget, like in my spending plan, or my wife and I spending plan for the month. Like we budget to go to a restaurant. How can we do better though?
Well, you don't buy typically when we go, we just get water and the free salsa. And I'm just joking. This is something he said earlier.
Yeah, you go to the restaurant, offer you the chips and salsa, and you order a water, and you sit outside, you enjoy the view, and like then you leave, and it's free. Never done that, by the way. We always go to get at least a beer.
Usually we just drink water. We don't order alcoholic beverages because the markup is a lot higher. Mm-hmm. But we get, one entree each, and we eat half of the entree, save the other half for lunch. We don't get dessert there or you can split meals. My husband's allergic to chicken, so that's my one opportunity to eat chicken. So I take it. And you don't get dessert there because desserts usually have a higher markup. Another thing you can do is if you can get gift cards, like from reward points from your credit card, you can use that. I've also cash flowed things where I've sold things at a garage sale and then use that money, which I'm probably going to do this week to pay for our anniversary dinner. Use that if your work gives out gift cards for like rewards. Like my husband's work gets a Veterans Day gift card to one of the restaurants in Waikiki. We used to save that for our anniversary dinner. So we'd have like a fancy anniversary dinner, watch the sunset over the beach and everything. COVID kind of ruined that idea, but you can save all of that stuff. Or eating out can also just be getting outside food. So you can get an entree from a restaurant. Like say you have a barbecue place nearby, just get the meat and then make the sides at home.
Oh, so get a piece of the food as takeout, but kind of like fill it yourself.
Yeah, sort of do like a hybrid eating out versus eating in, because a lot of times side dishes like salads and things are very cheap to make, but the markup is significant. Of course, that's what the restaurant wants you to do because that helps their bottom line.
And I like it's a little bit extreme, but certainly I think what I could take away from that is look for restaurants that if you are in a particular probably service profession, look for restaurants that do give discounts. Like we have a local pizza place that does fresh gluten-free pizza, so that was immediately like on our list, and then B, they give a 15% discount for educators. And like that's something that we eat for 15% less than the average person does because I'm an educator, and that hack also works for a lot of other types of stores, but certainly restaurants. Check it out. Are you firefighter, military, police, educator, nurse, doctor? I'm trying to think what other services might
Government employee.
Yeah, like that you would just get a special at some point, or it might just be seasonal as well, or on a particular holiday. Like where do you get it? I know my birthday, I did a trip around town to pick up all my free birthday perks, and I had a wonderful snack with my son for free. So take out memberships to all of these places and give them your birthday if it doesn't cost anything. So like Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts. There's a popcorn house downtown. Danny, you know about that one. That one does a free bag of popcorn on your birthday.
Wow. We usually eat at local restaurants. So the difference in price between a chain restaurant and a local mom and pop restaurant is pretty significant usually. Mm-hmm. So, we can get dinner for $10 a plate versus 15 to 20 at a chain restaurant.
So you might laugh at this one. This might actually be a mom hat with 2 young kids, but whenever we do a date night, so we don't actually jet set as far away. And here's why. This is where it does actually affect your budget. I more so look at it from the value of time. But if you jet set further away, you're probably paying your babysitter a little bit longer for you to be transporting yourself back and forth. That's something that might come to mind. But for me, it's more so the quality time that I have with my spouse. And so finding somewhere that is both local, might not be a chain store that can support a community member, especially in this time as well. but then also enjoying the time that you have closer to home and you have more of it. So in terms of budgeting, not just from the cost of the meal, but also the cost of your time as well comes to mind as well.
I use my parents. My parents are the babysitters.
There's the hack too. Yeah. Danny, you could also call the restaurant ahead while you're coming and tell them what your order is, so it's ready for you when you walk in, and you're just like, boom, sit down, eat, out I go. But that's getting a little bit extreme, right? So some other hacks I'm seeing that are popping up in the chat. Look for Groupon specials. So I guess Groupon is still a thing. I know they were an awful stock to own, but it's like the freebie one you get with Robinhood. But I guess they're still a thing. And yeah, look for those, particularly now with restaurants, probably trying to run a lot of specials to get people coming back again, get in that habit. There's probably stuff out there to be found.
I also do love William's comment.
I got to find it.
Mentioned, because this actually kind of dabbles back to what Laura had said. So there's a slight overlap into the last episode, but going ahead, and I think you win in this time in terms of value of time and learning a new skill set. Find out what your favorite meal is, and then go ahead and learn how to cook it and enjoying that other person's company while you're doing it. I love it, William. That makes me smile. That might be our next date night.
And I think especially like if you're making something that is kind of like Kathleen, like you said, like if you're making like Chinese or Japanese or Indian food, find out where those specialty markets are. Because I do think, yeah, you can find stuff way cheaper in those. Like I remember we went through a phase of trying to make Thai food, and trying to find those ingredients in Wegmans was actually sometimes impossible, and other times just highly overpriced. Yeah, versus going to like the local Asian market, and yeah, we were able to find things like rice noodles super cheap. Like
I know
like
this.
a pad Thai. Yeah, so it's like I think that's awesome advice. If you're going to try and learn to cook these things, if you're going to like say like, okay, tonight I'm going to make like one Indian meal and I'm going to make burgers another night, then trying to go to all these different grocery stores in one go, probably not worth your time. But certainly, yeah, if you're going to try and theme a week or learn a new skill, great place to
work
go.
it into your repertoire.
Absolutely. And just throwing in one more skill that I also have leaned on is, and trying to have this conversation with my kids as well, because I've realized that, especially here in America, I didn't find it as much, growing up in Zimbabwe. But when I grew up in Zimbabwe, I found that most of the fresh fruits that were in the store were based on if they were available. So if it was summer, they were summer fruit, they were available. Here in the US, what I've realized is you have different fruit that are available out of season, more so because we have the luxury of buying. And so what I'm trying to have a conversation with my kids and even teaching them kind of the seasons is what fruits, what vegetables, what food is grown in different aspects, what time of the year, and shopping with the time of year in mind. So as you know, kind of the fall, what your meal, your ingredients would be, and making food that fits that season, and having that dialogue as well with your kids wearing that hat.
It's mango season here right now.
Okay.
Oh, God, I love a good mango.
I got 2 nice juicy ones.
Any other hacks that are popping up for like saving your food budget? One that was coming to mind, it's kind of on the restaurant/grocery store one, is if you have credit cards that have rotating bonus categories, look for the ones that reward restaurants and also reward grocery stores. I think my Chase Freedom Flex might have 5% back on groceries at the moment. So it's certainly one that like the categories rotate every quarter. So I have to like check and see, is it rotated now that we're going into Q3, starting very soon. So I have to see like if that's changed, but that's one that can be a quick couple of percentage points saved, which can be $10 or so if you're talking about a grocery shop.
My biggest one is knowing when your grocery store puts out clearance items. So that's where I usually get my breads, dairy. Safeway near us has 50% off of the breads on Thursdays.
Oh.
Yeah, so I just buy sliced bread and breakfast things. Save a lot of money.
Yeah, I think that's smart. And it's like, I know when I go to Wegmans, I'll like scan for like the clearance section on like the meats just to see like what's there. And sometimes I will change up the food plan based on what's available and like super cheap at the time. Cause like, it's kind of like you need to use it tonight or it's going to go off. And it's like, okay, well, I can do that. I can be flexible. What about you, Danny?
I guess one that has recently come back on my radar, and we've talked about Aldi, and I know that I'd said I'd kind of frequented Wegmans more, but I'm kind of back on an Aldi kick and looking to go back, especially as William had mentioned that their organic section has grown. So I'm all open to kind of expanding my horizon there and dabbling a little bit more. But I had a while ago found, so I mentioned Frugal Mom at the beginning, and she has an Aldi kind of like 7 meals for $50, and it feeds 5 people. And so if you were to go to kind of thriftyfrugalmom.com and you were to look, she has that particular that Aldi meal plan, 7 dinners for less than $50, and she kind of talks you through that. So I guess that's next on my list, is to kind of dabble there. And if you do not have 5 people in your family, so if you're shopping for 2, a reminder that you can go ahead, it's kind of like your bulk shopping, or you're kind of pre-packaging your meals and putting them in the fridge, right? You could cook that quantity and then just put it in the fridge and eat for 2, but do it in a different way. So I'm going to be definitely going in there. Another hack that I normally do is, my little girl definitely likes, I kind of think about some of my staple items as far as cost, and oatmeal is one of those that is kind of fairly on a budget. It also is something that I can control what they eat in terms of calories in, but also eliminating some of like the sugars, correct? So I've found with me that I'll do the oatmeal. I'll be able to do, that kind of half a cup to a cup, roughly 36 cents. Then kind of in doing the math, that banana, roughly 45 cents, but then we're sharing a banana and I'm chopping that up. And then I've got like my kind of zazz it up, but frozen blueberries that I normally get from Wegmans, and I go with the Wyman's frozen, just because I feel like they're smaller and they do a better job for me in terms of that oatmeal. But that is something that's a staple. I also find that if it's less time in, that's a save for me as well, not just the budget, but less time thinking about meals. So my girl loves that. And so it's just an easy go-to in the morning. It's quick, it's simple, divide and conquer, dish it out. And then it's something that holds from a stomach in terms of asking for the next snack. It holds her for a longer period of time. And same. My boy, I haven't won him over there with oatmeal, so we're still dabbling in what he likes. But then the same with lunch. When I kind of think about lunch, I would dabble in 2 ways. If I pie a rotisserie chicken that's already been cooked, and I kind of break it up, what I normally do is I come home and I break it up and pre-portion. I would put it in a container. I take it off the bone. What I find is when I put the rotisserie chicken into the fridge and it sits on the bone a little bit longer, it's harder to get off. So I do it right at the beginning, but when I get home, put it in the Tupperware, and that's a win for me, because when I'm on the go and I'm hungry, and I might actually even go and impulse buy, right? Go to a grocery store. If I've got something in the fridge already, it's lowering my budget. I'm not thinking about a meal and I'm dabbling. The other is sometimes I might actually cook. So I buy the frozen chicken, buy them in bulk, right? Buy a couple, or I might free range chicken, go ahead and put it in the refrigerator and then let it defrost, but I'm actually cooking it, and then I'm creating a big meal for my family. That's also a go-to for me, and a save and a cut in cost when I'm actually cooking the chicken. And on America's Test Kitchen, I've actually found a recipe which allows you to cook your rotisserie chicken for 40 minutes. So the whole entire prep is 40 minutes. You're just basting your chicken with your salt and pepper, tying kind of the legs together, and you're actually putting a pan into a 450-degree oven, and you're letting it heat up. And then you're putting the rotisserie chicken, onto it. So because it's heated, it saves some of your the cooking time, and also tying the legs helps with the distribution of heat in terms of the cooking the white from the legs. That's a win for me as well. Saves time as well in terms of me. And then you actually turn off the oven for the last 30 minutes and it cooks on its own. So it's a very quick, easy way to cook a rotisserie chicken. And it's been a win for my family. And like I said, I dabble in rotisserie chicken because it can be on the move. I can add it to a lot of meals. I can either strip the meat and use it in a meal, so like another recipe, or I can go ahead. And that's again, I'll give a win to Laura Barrett from ChooseFI.com/meals. I've been dabbling in a couple of her meals. And what I love about her meals is she mentions the budget with them. So she breaks down and the cost of each meal. And so you're looking roughly at $2 to $3 meals max. And so that's a way to save as well. Dabbling in those. And there's some fantastic recipes that we as our family have been experimenting recently in. So definitely check those out.
All right, so let's wrap it up because we are at the top of the hour. Kathleen, any final tips, thoughts, anything you want to share with the community?
Yeah, you can actually cook your dinner twice as much volume, and then package half of it and have lunch the next day.
Super simple hack. I mean, that's what we do for lunch. It's like we make 4 portions, 2 for dinner, 2 for lunch the next day. You get to cook larger quantities, so it's cheaper. And then you also have lunch taken care of the next day, which is just a nice like time saver, thought saver sort of thing. Do you want to tell us about these resources that you have to kind of share with the audience? Tell me what this is.
Okay, so I actually made giveaways. These are PDFs that are fillable, so you can actually type it out or write it out. It's a shopping list, just something to keep you organized for if you want to keep track of what you're supposed to be buying, what store you're going to go to, how much it should be, and what quantity to buy. It's really useful if you are making a shopping list and something suddenly happens to you, like happened to me once. When I had my baby, I had to send my husband to it. So I had the list already written out. So I could just give it to him and be like, this is what you buy. Don't buy anything else. Obviously, it's 2, so you can just cut it in half. But
yes,
that'll help you keep on track for your budget and buy what you need to buy and remember what you need to buy instead of trying to remember it while you're shopping.
Okay. And then what about this one?
So this is a menu planner. I'm going to be honest. I don't actually use a menu planner. I just use a sheet of paper. I write down every meal I could possibly make with what I have in the in my fridge.
Yeah.
But you can do, if you want something a little more structured, here's how to basically plan your meal. I know you guys already did a meal planning, but this is including everything that you might need. So when prep, for example, if you're going to make something that is frozen on Monday, or your meat's frozen for Monday, you might want to pull that out on Sunday to defrost.
Gotcha.
So this is a good way to keep track for the whole week. And then, if you need to add anything to your shopping list, just something that's easy to put on your fridge so you can remember what you need.
And we have a couple more of these. Go ahead, Dan.
Sorry. What I've been doing is kind of putting an alert in my phone for like take out the chicken or defrost.
Yeah.
I always hate that moment where you realize you've forgotten and you can't cook that particular meal because it's not defrosted. It's been sitting where it shouldn't have been for a little bit longer. So I love that. My phone and creating an alert has been something that I've done also in my phone to mention go to the pantry and pick something from all the ingredients that we haven't used yet is definitely something that I have put in my phone on a regular as well.
That's a good idea.
And then this one you have up is what, a full month and trying to just meal plan an entire month? Okay.
Right. My mom does that actually.
We do. Right. She plans out the entire month. Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. I cannot plan that far ahead. So I do like a 2-week.
Well, you do a 2-week rotation, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like if you're planning out longer, I guess that means you have more opportunity to group meals together that use the same ingredients. You can buy in more bulk. You do have to watch out probably for the fresh stuff and like what's going to potentially go off by 2 weeks down the road. Or do you go back to the store and kind of supplement in fresh stuff? Like, so you're doing like a big shop every 2 weeks and then like a smaller one as you go?
No, I go to the farmer's market every week, but then the regular grocery store so the farmer's market is just the fresh fruits and vegetables. Of course, for us, it's year round and it's mango season. So like I can pick up mango and I can get banana. We have like 20 million varieties of banana. So that's where I get most of my fresh fruits and vegetables. If not, I steal it from my mom's yard.
Ooh, and a hack on the bananas.
Raiding the parents' fridge. Yes, there is the hack. That's what I used in college.
Oh yeah, make your parents pay for it.
The hack on the bananas is putting the bananas so peel them when they're about to go off and put them in a gallon. Yes, put them in a gallon bag and actually put them into the fridge, deep freeze. Because what I then do is I make smoothies with them, and they also almost taste like a dessert for your kids as well when you slice them up with your oatmeal.
PSA: don't put them in the freezer with the skin on because it won't come off.
I peel them.
I learned that the hard way.
And extra, break them up into small pieces before you freeze them so that you can do smaller quantities easier. And also if they're like if they all like freeze together in one bunch for some reason, it's easier to break them apart. Whole bananas when they're frozen are sometimes a pain. All right, just looking through the comments. Yeah.
We get ice cream bananas. They're like that big. They're super cute.
So cute.
Tommy's got an ultimate one. He's like, I'm too lazy to eat breakfast, so I save a lot of money that way. So if you cut one meal out of your day, some people do that with lunch. I don't know if I recommend that from a health perspective, but certainly if you're only eating 2 meals a day versus 3, it probably does help. Cutting out snacking probably helps too. And then from a health perspective, it's trying to marry all these different things: your financial, your health, your mental well-being, like all of those things, like you're trying to kind of marry those together in this FI journey and finding like where the right balance is. Like if each of these were a dial, like where are you dialing each of these into to be right for you? Saving money can sometimes mean compromising on
Don't forget what in your pocket.
What's that?
Said, don't put bananas in your pocket and forget about them.
Oh, yes, definitely.
At least I didn't think you were happy to see them.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining tonight. Kathleen, I put your website up on the screen, cookingupfire.com. So if you're looking to get some of those freebies, you can find those there. Danny, anything you want to share with the group? I know we have the Meal Planning 101, which is where you can find a lot of ChooseFI Foundation's meal planning resources. So we have our own meal planner there. We have the video where we did an interview with Laura Barrett and Danny. We talked about getting your kids involved. There is the ChooseFI Foundation. What do we call this? The class where you're teaching kids how to meal plan and meal prep, Danny, right?
Absolutely. And I was going to say that's kind of my biggest last hack is getting your kids involved, because you're having conversations, you're getting them interested in the process. And so as a result, it's a family experience. So absolutely dabble in that. Go to, www.choosify.foundation.org/meal planning 101, and you can find those there. You can dabble and see. I've actually got a 3rd through 5th grade course where I teach your 3rd through 5th grader how to meal plan, and it's all self-paced, and I'm doing the teaching, and then you can have the conversations with them afterwards, which is fantastic. And that's not the only that kind of gets your feet wet, but I do have also 14 other videos which teaches them about financial concepts, again self-paced, self-driven, on a 3rd through 5th grade level, and they can dabble in things from debit to credit to budgeting a pet, risk management, saving, a lot of good concepts that kids need to have young, and you can be having them with them young and getting them into the process and getting them into the kitchen and getting them cooking with you.
Yes.
So a life hack there.
And then just to finally wrap it up, we are going to be continuing on the series for the rest of the summer. So I think we are on, this is number 3. So we've got another 7, I think, to go. You can find the upcoming events at choosify.com/events. If you are on YouTube, please hit subscribe, hit reminder. Anytime you see us posting the next webinar that's popping up, you should see the next one already available in YouTube. For Facebook, I'm not allowed to actually post the link for it until it's within 7 days. So pretty much as soon as I hang up this call, I can go schedule out the next one. But hit the remind button on those as well. Hit like, hit share, tag people in them that you think would be interested in hearing the content. Thank you to everyone who was really contributing in the comments tonight. It was great to hear all of your perspectives, your own hacks, things that you've done in your life as well. Thank you to Kathleen for being our guest speaker tonight. Good luck with your move.
Thank you.
It's like you're all boxed up. You're still here for us tonight, which was wonderful. And Danny, thank you for all your insight as well. Let's wrap it up. Have a great night, everyone. Talk to you soon.